chapter 2, verse number 18. The Bible says, "And the Lord said, It is not good that man should be alone. I will make him an helpmeet for him." Now turn over to chapter number 3, in the very next chapter, verse number 20. Genesis 3:20, and the Bible says here, "And Adam called his wife's name Eve because she was the mother of all living." Here in creation, as God is creating life in mankind, we see that he makes a simple statement in verse number 28, or verse number 18, of chapter 2, that it's not good that man should be alone. I will make him a helpmeet. What's happening here is God has made all the creatures of the world, both in the sea and on the land and in the air, and he brings them by Adam, and Adam sees for himself, well, okay, there's a male and a female for each. There's a male bear and a female bear. There's a male dinosaur and a female dinosaur. And he gets to himself and he's like, wait a minute, there's only one of me. And God says, it's not good that man should be alone. And it's not. Guys, we get into more trouble when we're on our own, most times, than if we are not on our own. And so God says here, I will make him an helpmeet for him. Now, the term here, helpmeet, or helper in our modern day language, that term helper gives us the impression or the idea of someone who's subservient or secondary to the primary. So someone who is just underneath Adam. But as we look into the Hebrew, that's not what is meant here. Okay? And in thinking that, we've done a great disservice to what God has in mind for the ladies of this earth, the wives and the mothers. There's nothing second class about God's plan for women. Okay? Look at all our mothers and all our wives, what they've had to do. If we've had kids, or our mothers for us, they had to, first of all, carry us for 9 months and give birth to us. And there is no experience that any man can have that would give them that kind of experience of birthing a baby. They've had to feed that baby from their own body. They've had to change diapers. How about it, guys? Have you changed diapers before? Yeah. Don't like it, don't want to do it. Had to sort of choke it down a couple of times, especially depending on what was in the diaper. And with my boys, it seemed like every time I changed the diaper, they gave me a shower. But imagine what our mothers had to go through. Our wives had to go through. And yes, we've helped them, and we helped them along the way. That's part of it. But not only that, but they chase away the bad dreams at night. They comfort us when we're scared. They bandage us when we skinned our knee. All of these things. Okay? There's nothing second class about that and about what they've had to do. And if we look deeper at this term of helpmeet, we'll see that the term here in the Hebrew is ezer kenegdo, excuse me. And ezer means helper, E-Z-E-R, and kenegdo means suitable or meet, and that's how we end up with helpmeet. Okay? But ezer kenegdo means to be strong where the other is weak. That's where we get the idea of yin and yang. Okay? That's not something that originated back in China or Japan or wherever, but it is, our weaknesses, our mate is to work, is to fit into those weaknesses and be strong and be strength for us in those weaknesses. I can tell you that I'm not very outgoing, but my wife is. A weakness. She compensates for that weakness. She's stringent on rules, and I'm more lackadaisical. I let the kids get away with stuff, and she's more regimented. Again, weakness and strength, okay? And that's what is meant here by easer connecto. It means, its meaning is to surround, protect, aid, help, secure, assist, and support in times of hardship and distress. A counterpart. Eve was meant for Adam to fill in the spots where he was weak. Okay, now we see that Eve had her own weaknesses and she was deceived by Satan, by the serpent. Okay, but we as men are to fill in those counter weaknesses. If Adam had said, no, we're not going to eat it, then Eve would have followed suit. That's why Adam was blamed for the sin and not Eve. Eve was deceived, Adam sinned. Okay? Connecto indicates that the easer is the man's match, literally as in front of him. Okay? So what that means is in defense of, standing in front of him to fulfill him and protect him. Victor Hamilton puts it as connecto suggests that what God creates for Adam will correspond to him. Thus the new creation will neither be superior nor an inferior, but an equal. The creation of this helper will form one half of the polarity and will be to man as the South Pole is to the North Pole. Without one, the other wouldn't exist. She is to be his strongest ally in pursuing God's purposes, and she is to be his first roadblock when he veers off course. There are ears in our consciousness, as we are for them. Okay? She is to be there as a helpmeet and an encouragement as we are doing God's will, because as we become discouraged, they come in and stand beside us and lift us up. And same way, the other way around, when we start to get off course, they're to be the first ones, or we'll be the first ones for them, to say, oh, hang on a second. You're doing something wrong here. Stop, back up. You're getting out of God's will. Let's look at how Solomon describes a virtuous woman. Turn over to Proverbs chapter number 31. And Solomon takes some time here from verses 10 through 31 in chapter 31. He describes a virtuous woman. Proverbs chapter number 31. Last chapter of the book, just before Ecclesiastes. Proverbs chapter number 31. Solomon here writes, "Who can find a virtuous woman? For her price is far above rubies. The heart of her husband doth safely trust in her, so that he shall have no need of spoil. She will do him good and not evil all the days of her life. She seeketh wool and flax, and worketh willingly with her hands. She is like the merchant's ships. She bringeth her food from afar. She rises also while it is yet night, and giveth meat to her household, and a portion to her maidens. She considereth a field, and buyeth it. With the fruit of her hands she planteth a vineyard. She girdeth her loins with strength, and strengtheneth her arms. She perceiveth that her merchandise is good. Her candle goeth not out by night. She layeth her hands to the spindle, and her hands hold the distaff. She stretcheth out her hand to the poor, yea, she reacheth forth her hand to the needy. She is not afraid of the snow for her household, for all her household are clothed with scarlet. She maketh herself coverings of tapestry, her clothing is silk and purple. Her husband is known in the gates, when he sitteth among the elders of the land. She maketh fine linen, and selleth it, and delivereth girdles unto the merchant. Strength and honor are her clothing, and she shall rejoice in time to come. She openeth her mouth with wisdom, and in her tongue is law of kindness. She looketh well to the ways of her household, and eateth not the bread of idleness. Her children rise up and call her blessed, her husband also, and he praiseth her. Many daughters have done virtuously, but thou excellest them all. Favor is deceitful, and beauty is vain, but a woman that feareth the Lord she shall be praised. Give her of the fruits of her hands, and let her own works praise her in the gates. We see here in this passage that Solomon prices her, puts her price above rubies. That she's got a heart for her husband, and he safely trusts in her. She seeks the best for her house. She's up early and stays up late. She makes wise choices. She's strong. Solomon said her candle goeth not out by night. She's ever watchful. She's always watching and prepared. She cares about others. She takes care of her husband so well that he's known in the gates of the city. She's honorable. She's wise with the word. She's not a gossip. She doesn't tear down people. She's constantly busy. She's praised by her husband and her children. And Solomon ends his description by giving advice. Favor or lush words are deceitful, and beauty is vain or fleeting, but a woman that feareth the Lord is to be praised. Does that sound like someone who's subservient? No, it sounds like someone who takes charge and is prepared, and that's what our mothers and our wives should be. Again, as God is making Eve, he calls her Ezer Kenegdo. Its meaning is to surround and protect, to aid, to help, to assist and support in times of hardship and distress. The term, by the way, is used 21 times in the Bible. Twice for the woman in Genesis chapter 2, verse 18, and also again in verse number 20. 3 times for nations whom Israel appealed to for military aid. Isaiah chapter 30, verse 5. Ezekiel chapter 12, verse 14. Daniel chapter 11, verse 34. 16 times it refers to God himself as Israel's helper. God uses the same term that he uses for Eve as he uses to describe himself as Israel's helper. In Exodus chapter 18, verse number 4. Deuteronomy 33, 7, verses 7 and 26 and 29. Psalms chapter 20, verse 2. Chapter 33, verse 20. Chapter 70, verse 5. Chapter 89, verse 19. Chapter 115, verse 9, verses 10, and verses 11. Psalm 121, verses 1 and 2. Psalm 124, verse 8, and 146, verse 5. And in Hosea chapter 13, verse 9. God is referred to as Israel's protector and helper. If we look at these references, we'll note something that will change our perspective in the term Ezer. It's used consistently in a military context. Israel seeks military aid from its neighbors. God helps Israel's people. He delivers them. He helps them from their enemies. He's their shield and defense. He's their sanctuary. He's their help and their shield. He's better than chariots and horses. He's standing sentry watch over his people. Over and over again in those passages, those things are portrayed. Remarkably, even Eden, the Garden of Eden, fits this pattern. Even the idyllic Garden of Eden was a war zone. Realize that Satan was there, ready to make war on Adam and Eve. And he did that. But in God's command to Adam to rule and subdue, he put Adam and Eve on high alert that fierce resistance lay ahead. God's command to man to keep or guard the garden was the same command or term that he used when in talking about the cherubim who guarded the way into the garden with a flaming sword after Adam and Eve sinned and he cast them out of the garden. The reason was that the powerful enemy was already plotting an attack. Satan was ready to trip them up and did. because Adam couldn't follow the one rule that God had put down. Now, we can see through all of that, through all of those passages in Psalms and in Exodus and Deuteronomy and Hosea, that the term ezer kenegdo means it has a reference to, or is illustrating towards, a warrior. Someone who has to be ever vigilant and standing in the way to protect. Isn't that what our mothers did for us when we were younger? They stood there, they protected us until we were able to do it for ourselves. And even then, even after, I know now, man, if you hurt one of my kids, look out. Mama Bear is going to be after you in no time at all. She'll come out with claws and fangs and everything else. And that's what a mother is. They chase away those bad dreams. They bind the wounds when we fall and hurt ourselves. They stand strong beside us and lift us up. They feed us, not only physically, but also spiritually. My mother led me in the ways of God, both through her actions and through doing daily devotions with me and teaching me God's Word. God uses the ezer to break man's loneliness by soldiering with him wholeheartedly and at full strength for God's kingdom. That is what Eve was to be. Not just someone to stand in the background, but someone to stand beside and to fill in the empty spots or the soft spots in Adam. That's what our mothers do for us. And that's why we honor our mothers today, is for all the things that they have done for us and watching over us and providing for us. Even more biblical support comes for this idea from passages that use military language for women. Both in Ruth and in Proverbs 31, which we read, women are called women of valor, or the term is used Hayil, Hayil. That term was used both in Ruth, and we studied Ruth, saw her virtues, and here in Proverbs, what we hear from the virtues that Solomon describes. Reading through the genealogies of the Bible, we come across men's names that start with Eli or Ezer. Eli, Ezer. Abby, Ezer. Or just plain Ezer. If this was a term that was supposed to be subservient, it's unlikely that the Jewish fathers would call their sons by that name. Rather, it stands more for standing in the gap and being a warrior, standing beside, being protected. Like Adam, Eve and the women after her are a work of genius and a marvel to behold. Because, as God said, and He didn't just say this about Adam, but He said this about all of us. We are fearfully and wonderfully made. We're made in His image. In the fact that we are to be like Him with body, soul, and spirit. God did not create woman to bring half of herself into His global commission, or to minimize herself when the man is around, but rather to stand in the gap beside her husband, her helpmeet. Adam was perfectly capable of doing it for himself. Look, when Betty went to New York for a couple of weeks, I was perfectly capable, while she was gone, to take care of the dogs and make my meals and do my laundry and make my bed and all that stuff. She didn't come back from that trip to an RV that was complete shambles. At least I didn't think it was. The office might have been, but the RV wasn't. We're able to take care of ourselves. Okay? But Eve was there to help him, to strengthen him. I missed her while she was gone. I missed her help and her support and her caring. And that is what Eve was there for. That's what mothers and wives are there. If Eve was made to be subservient, and Adam was to think and protect and provide for her, then she becomes a burden rather than a help. And God made her to be a helpmeet, a helper to him. The kind of help that man needs demands full deployment of her strength, of her gifts, and of the best that she has on us. Stop and think as we honor our mothers this day about how our lives have changed, how our lives have been blessed, how we are better because of the things that our mothers did. Now look, did our mothers make mistakes? Were they perfect 100% of the time? No, we're human. We have that fault. But God made them to stand in the gap with us. And realize that God, as we saw, God uses the same term for himself. Stop and think of how God, on our behalf, stands with us, stands beside us, stands in front of us, provides for us, takes care of us. And please don't take this as I'm demeaning God in any way or bringing him down, rather lifting up in that. That sounds an awful a lot like the job he gave our mothers for us. So, as we go today and this week and time, stop and think. The Bible tells us that we need to honor our fathers and our mothers. That doesn't mean just to obey them, but it means to honor them, to remember them, to hold them in esteem for the things that they've done for us over the course of our life and are still doing for us if they are still alive. They're still there for us. They're still there to support us. Ben's parents up in New York State, man, if we have a problem, if there's any way they can help, they're there. And we honor God when we honor